new chancellor, new government. Would it be fair to understand or analyse Rachel Reeves's announcement, her moment of political theatre, as a continuation of or a departure from the orthodoxy that you've just described?
So I was very hopeful. I mean, I shouldn't say it. I voted Labour, right? I voted Labour because the Conservatives really had it coming for them.
Yeah,
right?
I think they deserved a kicking. It would be probably the polite way of putting it. Yeah.
Usually I don't vote for either of them, frankly, but I've been bitterly disappointed because, as far as I can see, it's at best more of the same. I think Rachel Reeves seems to be very much captured by the Treasury. And Starmer seems to have just deferred all economic matters to Reeves. And I'm afraid Keir Starmer is not a great communicator. He does have a certain sort of funereal air. You can imagine him as a very good funeral director.
Which I hear is a booming trade at the moment.
Yeah, booming trade, absolutely. And so, it would be funny, except it's not, because it's presiding over tragedies. And these tragedies, remember, are entirely avoidable tragedies. It should be perfectly possible to harness these wonderful new technologies to enable everybody in a society to be better off. That is not rocket science. Some societies have done it. I give examples in Left Behind. There are enough societies that have done it that it becomes a disgrace to see such an unequal society as our own.
What should she do then? What should she announce? What would... In the sort of multiverse string theory world where the budget announcement happens and your hope is vindicated and you feel great the next day, what would that have involved?
It would say, Reeves would stand up and say that we've got far too much power of decision concentrated in the Treasury and indeed in Whitehall more generally, and so we're going to devolve money and powers to the local governments around the country. And especially, we're going to work on regions, because the regions are a big enough unit that you can do economic policy there. And so economic policies for growth, we're really devolving to the regional governments. They should be devising growth plans. And the growth plan for the country will be the aggregate of these growth plans for the regions. And we'll occasionally intervene in case everybody wants to do the same thing. That's not very smart. But actually, we're going to encourage networks of the region's mayors so that they learn from each other. In the book, I describe the greatest economic miracle in human history, which is what Deng Xiaoping achieved in China in the 1980s. And it's worth a few minutes to describe it. Deng Xiaoping, when he came to power in China, China was like nothing like it is now. It was dirt poor. And it had just come out of terrible, ruinous, I think called the Great Leap Forward, which was a great leap backwards under Mao Zedong. And Mao had contributed his one big contribution to human welfare by dropping dead. And so what did Deng do? He built on a Chinese tradition of competitive entry exams, the Mandarin class. But instead of knowledge of Confucius, he said, what we want is knowledge of economics and science, hard science. And he then said, anybody aged 25 to 35, you,
Me.
in the Communist Party, can enter this competition. That cut it down to 20 million people. He then picks the top 40. Imagine them gathered in this room. And he says, congratulations, you're the top 40 out of 20 million. Feel good about yourself? Yeah. You feel just like those people fast-tracked into the Treasury.
I do, yeah.
You do, yeah. And now he says...
Warm on the inside.
Yeah, and he said, now, for the next 5 years, you are each going to be the governor of one of our 40 provinces. Feel even better. You've got full plenipotentiary powers from me. Your word will be God in that region. Sounds good, yeah?
Yeah, sounds even better.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we're going to tell you what we want you to do. You've got to double your region's GDP in that 5 years. And you've got to halve infant mortality. And we in the Politburo have no idea how to do it. But we'll be watching you. If you haven't started an initiative in each of these two things in the first 6 months, you're permanently thrown out of the top 40. You'll never get back in. So, off you go, Joe. You're heading a province, let's call it South Yorkshire, you've never been in. Right? And have you ever been in South Yorkshire, Joe?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I've been there, yeah. So you're eminently qualified then.
Yeah,
off you go.
Great, right, off you go. So you've got to double its GDP in the next 5 years, Joe, and halve its infant mortality. What are you going to do, Joe? Panic?
I'll probably get to work, I imagine, yeah.
Are you going to say, I know what to do?
No.
No, you're going to ask people.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what they did. These 40 young people, they had the good sense to say, well, if the Politburo doesn't know how to do it, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And so they went and asked people, if you're going to want to halve infant mortality, probably be a good idea to go to some hospitals, right? Say, what, here you are in this hospital. Why are so many kids dying in our region? If you had dream powers, what would you do? And they sketch. If we had dream powers, we'd have done this. Right, my word's God here. That's what we're going to do. Right? And so you get 40 regions, all taking different experiments, right? For that 5 years. By the end of 5 years, and remember, big boss.
Are you Deng Xiaoping in this situation?
That's
you are, right? Okay.
Big boss Deng Xiaoping is watching you. And he's saying, halfway through, what you're doing, Joe, on infant mortality isn't working, Joe, is it? Whereas the guy there recording, he's seems to have done something that's really working for him. Now, it may be that over there is very different from you sitting here, Joe, but all I say is go and have a look. Go and have a look. If you think you can learn from it, bring it back. If you're not, that's up to you. That's what they did. And Deng's system kept going 8 times. 8 times 5 years. 40 years. It's the 40 years in human history where we see in thousands of years of human history, this is the 40 years, is the fastest fall in human poverty ever. It's the economic miracle of China, taking it from an impoverished society to a middle-income society. That's what was achieved by devolving power, experiments in parallel. Deng also learned from others. First thing he did was go and visit Singapore and Japan. According to Mao's theory, the working people should have been dying in the streets. They weren't. And so he said, I wonder if we could do the equivalent of Singapore in China. And so he devolved power to a coastal city, and hey presto, all along the coast of China now, there are very successful cities. So he learned from others, and he learned by experiments in parallel. Does the Treasury do any of that? Any of it? Does it learn from others? No. Huh? Does it enable experiments in parallel within the geography we've got, which could be all the different mayors and their teams trying things? No, they don't. So that's what I would want to see, an announcement that said, okay, we're shifting powers and money to the regions.